Now for the fourth score in our series of Patreon entrants to the Ravel Challenge, Ravel Orchestration Challenge. We've got Jaap's score here, and yeah, this is just a really cool score. It's very well thought out, and I just really enjoyed looking at it and looking through it. We're going to listen to the mock-up and as we view the score, but I just want to point a few things out first. Some touches that I thought were quite cool. Listen for the harp at bar 33 here, and also listen for the little touches of celesta here and there. They're just very, very cool, like this little chord at the end, and these little touches here, these little glimmers. Yeah, and there was this one other part where it was just very significant. Yeah, right in here. These little bits right in here. And also listen to what Jaap does with just like the, how he finds rhythmic emphasis, melodic emphasis in certain areas. All right? So, let's zoom in a little bit here. Okay, so with that, let's have a look at this score. Yeah, wasn't that cool? Jaap obviously spent some time working on his mock-up and just really kind of fine-tuning things. I just wanted to point out one or two bits that I thought were especially neat. Sorry, my display just keeps jumping around. Okay, yeah, so this was awesome, in terms of the playback. Yeah, there are some tempo changes, and they're not marked in the score, which I guess they might have been hidden objects, or perhaps there was like a DAW version of this and a notated version. I don't know, but it was still pretty darn cool. Okay, so I'm just going to make a few comments here about layout, and that is that I feel in situations like this where you have space and and you've got a conductor to think about, it's better just to really have like all of the string staves. Do you know what I mean? Because like here you've got 3 string staves, viola, cello, and bass. And here you've got violin 1 and 2 and viola. So I think it's better just to have the blank staves here of the first 2 violins and then the blank staves here of the cellos and basses. Okay? In general, try to keep your string staves just whole all the way through and try not to reduce them unless it's really just down to 2 voices and there's not a whole lot of room on the page, right? Just so that there's some kind of continuity. Also in places like this, where you've got like flute and pretty much you've got 2 clarinets, which I don't know. Yeah, 2 clarinets, bass clarinet, bassoon, and then flutes on top, and then here you have English horn on top. In a situation like this, where you're going from one page to the next, I would have both flute and English horn on both sides. If there was a question of reducing. But in a situation like this, just really in all practical purposes, you should just have every staff on the score, except for maybe changing off percussion here and there and harp if it's really crowded. But I mean, when we look at the big tutis here, I mean, look at this. That fits on the page very, very well. So I don't really see the need for reducing staves because you're not able to fit 2 systems on a page, right? So it just seems like a little bit too much extra work. All right. And there was another little bit of advice that I wanted to give you, and that is this. A2 and A1, all right? Okay, so here's the problem. I know what you mean here, right? You're actually saying, I want the first player here, and I want the second player here. But that is like this is the wrong terminology to use. I'm seeing this. This is the 4th or 5th score that I've seen this error in, and I really want everybody to just go and look up, like maybe watch Justin Toki's little video on how to name different parts and entrances and so on and so forth. Okay, well look, when you say A1, it actually doesn't mean anything. A2, A2, it means with 2 instruments, right? When you say with 1 instrument, you're not telling us with which instrument that is, right? Is it the first player? Is it the third player, as you've got them marked 1 and 3? Okay, so look, you have just got to mark the name of the player by number with a period. Get rid of the A. It's just the A. It's just totally wrong. Okay, everybody? 1 period means player number 1. Okay, A2 means with both players, right? Just do not say A1, all right? Okay, see, it's here as well. And here's another confusing thing. You're saying solely A1, right? I don't get that. Solely means 2 players or more, right? Or a section of players, like the strings would be solely. That means you're telling the conductor to bring them out, right? Solely A1, solely A2. So look, just this would be one period space solo, right? That is how to mark that. All right. Right. And once again, this would just be 1 period solo. All right, so yeah, so just more of this A1 stuff. All right, so so aside from that, the layout is pretty good. Okay, so now let's talk about the orchestration. All right, so you're starting off, and I really love this little thing, da, and then together, ba, da, da, ba, da, da, ba, da. I mean, it just really brings out some character to the entire line. Okay, where I would worry about things here is that the that you are slurring over the gesture, and also consider how the player is going to be bowing this, right? So down, up, down, up. So that is actually not a bad bowing scheme. It's just that the beginning of the gesture in winds does not have any bowing enunciating it in the other part. So you don't really have to, you know what I mean? It's like leaving that out is more like, I'm thinking like late romantics would have that kind of that kind of, well, I don't want to say carelessness, but that, like less attention to the detail of it or less enunciation of it. But, yeah, that would be something that I would just think about right in there, whether or not the bowing should follow this little gesture. Okay. Now, here you do something really kind of cool, and that is you just add some shine to the rising strings, right? And here you're saying Sol G. That's kind of cool. Keeping in mind that this, when you have the strings an octave below the flutes, and especially when the strings are quite heavy, the way that you've got them scored here, two on both violins on the melody, then the flute will tend to just disappear. The radiance of it will be there, right? But if you were intending this flute part to stand out, then it won't. And you can even hear in your mock-up that it just really, it's kind of like an afterthought, just like a little bit of coloration, but it really just, you can't really hear it on its own that well. And in fact, that's really that's the scoring strategy in a classical sense. Okay, and this was neat. Once again, you're continuing the little strategy, and once again, 1 period for first player. And I just love these little touches, like this nice long concert A natural here. Really, and the little ting here of the celesta on the second beat, which is a rhythmic gesture. In general, the rhythmic motivation in this arrangement is really nicely done. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's very nicely done. Now, it gets a tiny bit stodgy here with the double bass holding this for 2 bars, but that's okay because you have other elements at play here that are moving the pulse forward as we get into the next bar. And everything's very, very soft. Okay. I don't know why you had to leave rests here. I don't think it really makes a huge difference. Whether this is, because the players themselves, are going to. I mean, you're just going to feel a little weakness here, right? Really, rather than emphasis when the at the entrance of each first violin part. That's what I would sense there. Okay, now there's a lot of dynamic mixing here. And once again, as I have told everybody quite a few times, it's really better to let the score dictate how the balance is going to work out, right? Rather than having so many different dynamics on different parts. So like just to explain this concept once again, if you have 2 players from the same section, from on different instruments or in different chairs, and one of them is marked at one dynamic and another is marked at another dynamic, and they hear each other's performance, they will assume that the other player has got the same dynamic as them, and they will try to match their dynamic, right? And that just is something that happens naturally, whether they're even looking, whether they're even noticing the dynamics marked that much. So this whole house of cards can just collapse when there are so many different dynamic markings. Like, for instance here, what is the point of having the violas play softer than everybody else? Or, I just don't see that you need to do that. I think everybody should be the same dynamic here. Okay. Now there's some other balance problems in terms of like how things are scored, and we'll talk about that as we get to those places. All right. But I mean, in general, it's actually fairly well balanced. I'm not really ripping this up on those grounds, but yeah. Now this is going to raise a question. The way that you got this marked, this measured tremolo tying to the next note. I would get rid of the tie. okay? Because the player is going to raise their hand and say, "Does this mean that I keep tremoloing?" Because every once in a while you'll see a modern score or like an old, you'll see like an old romantic score where somebody has chosen to do this and they intend that the tremolo continue. All right, so I would say just kill this, because I know you don't want the next note to enunciate, but I just feel that any enunciation that you get, any articulation that you get on that note, is going to be so minor as to be completely unnoticeable, right? So I would just say kill this slur or tie. Sorry. Yeah. So nicely done here on bass clarinet, going boop 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 boop. And it, once again, in situations like this where each system is just very, very different from the last, especially in the middle here, this is just another argument for all of your pages having the layout of all the staves. All right, it's just easier to track all the way through. Okay. If you are not able to reduce this to 2 systems per stave, then there is just no point in doing that much reducing, right? If there's no pressure, too, that's another thing. If there's no vertical pressure on your score, you might as well just leave them all in for a piece that's a minute and a half long. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, and this is just such a nice little touch here. The doubling of the C trumpet right at the entrance to where this rises. Okay, very, very cool, and I like this. This little, da 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 da, just a nice little variation on the whole functional texture of this section, and it's nice. And that really relates to how the melody rises out of there. Okay, just such a nice idea. And I really like the way that the brass finds its way out of this. Okay, that's just so nice. Yep. And this all works pretty well with the timpani, adding some emphasis there, and these little touches by Celesta, which I've already mentioned before, on the second beat. I would say just like everybody should go have another listen to that. You could stop the video now and jump back and have a listen to the way that this starts right around bar 17, if you want to just hear exactly what I mean there. Just very delicate string scoring in here in the second violins. That's very nicely done. I like the way that they double the oboe without doing the same thing. You know what I mean? There is tremolo, boop, and then coming in, just more as just straight bowing there. And that just works great. That is, that has a nice touch to it. It's I don't know, just very delicate and very well thought out. And this little timpani roll here as we go into the transition to the next part. Okay, that is also just priceless. Now here is once again another very cool touch. And that is the little flowing octaves on harp. Now, I'll mention now that that what's especially cool here is that Jaap is aware of the fact that that quickly repeated harp notes will, if they are really on the same string, will buzz, and as they are played twice. So he's gotten around that by having enharmonic pitches, right? So B flat and A sharp. These is just a bunch of, to your ear, it's just going to be a bunch of B flats, right? So this nice little flowing part is very cool. I would take issue a little bit at how, I'm just wondering if there is a way of notating this so that it's much easier on the player's eye. Like, I would look at this. I think the harpist might look at this and just feel that this, that they would want this completely rescored, right? you want to think that what is best for the harpist is to play, is to trade off octaves as they play, right? Left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand. Do you see how that all like works out? You're able to go left, right, left, right, left, right. And even if there was a way of keeping like one hand on the B flats and the other hand on the A sharps, then then you would just have then the player could just really focus on the motion of their hands, and also just the constant changing back and forth of clefs. I think is just distracting. It's not impossible to read this, but I just feel it needs to be rewritten. Okay, so that like just think, and also have the left hand stems and beams on the bottom and the right hand on the top, right? So just go B flat octaves for the left hand, stems down. A sharp octaves for the right hand, stems up, right? And then B flat stems down, A sharp stems up, B flat stems down, right? And that's just much, much easier to read. And just try to keep it stretched out over the grand staff, trading off between the stems being up or down. And that way you don't need to do this, right? This is just not, I just don't feel this is going to work. Maybe you're a harpist. Maybe you've tried this out already, Yop. I don't know. But I get huge warning signs from looking at the way this is scored. Okay. I won't go on and on about it. So this is neat. English horn, an octave down from where it is scored in the piano part. And just very, very cool, very simple scoring. Now the flowing of the harp takes the place of some sort of pluck on the downbeat. I would say the only weakness is when you get to right here. And see right here you got a nice low B flat, so boop, boop, boop. And then when you get to here, there's no boop, way down low. So, but I mean, that still creates a kind of cool effect. So it's like boop, 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 boop. So that's kind of what how the pulse feels, how it realizes itself in terms of sound. Okay, so English horn to oboe to first horn, right? That is all very, very nice. Okay, and then a little glimmer of celesta going up after these tremoloed parts come to an end. I'm not so sure that you needed your strings to be quite so, to tremolo down, to get softer, right? I felt that getting softer here basically puts the violins at a real disadvantage to everybody else. And then also the same thing is sort of reducing. I think you'd be better off just saying P espressivo and putting in more nuances here. You know what I mean? Just have the clarinets be pianissimo and any other thing that you're worried about being too loud. And then just mark your solos P espressivo, right? Yeah. And that way it can just be P against pianissimo, and then you could do your little crescendo to mezzo forte here in all parts, right? All right. Except for maybe the horns. Okay, and this is cool. 2 octaves apart. Now, you have to understand here that if you do flutes 2 octaves apart with clarinet, then you get, especially with a flute playing very, very high, you get a very organ-like sound, or almost calliope type sound, that's like the circus organ. And it's going to, it might just have an unpleasant overtone, just that many overtones stacked up together, especially the clarinet pushing there at the second octave higher. It just has a kind of a ringing in the ear, and you could even hear that in the mock-up. There was just a bit of a kind of a, slight coarseness to the way that rang. But still, nicely put together, like the timpani, doing its like almost like a Morse code underneath that. And then this is also a very cool touch too. Um, yeah, pretty well thought out altogether, right? And then this rising. And do you see how the way that you're just really reducing every chance you possibly get makes the page jump up like this? See, like a conductor is going to want to read across as much as possible and just see the next part going to the next part, right? So, um, so try to try to have page layouts that are really much more consistent. That even if there are lots of empty staves, like say in this harp part, right? You don't need to economize so much. Okay. Now here was a balance problem. Okay. It's cool that you're going forte in the strings against mezzo forte and everything else. And this is okay. A2 is going to be very strong, though, on the horns. Okay? And once again, A1, this is just one period. Okay? Now, this is the problem that I felt, is the way that these thirds are stacked and the way that the clarinets are doubling the flutes. Right? So you're going to get a somewhat phased sound here with that kind of doubling. Even though, like, usually I talk about how clarinets, when clarinets play unison on the same note, 2 or 3, then you get a phased sound. Well, you can also get that if you have high clarinets doubling high flutes with no kind of doubling from strings to mellow out the sound, right? So I feel that is a danger here. And also here, when the oboes and the clarinets double, that's a very Tchaikovsky-like sound, but the thing is that it should be way softer here if you want a balance with the strings. So you can see, like, you're taking pains to balance this and say mezzo forte, but even in the mock-up, once again, you could hear that this color just blared out. It was really, just pushed its way through the texture, right? So I think this needs to be lightened considerably. All right. Okay, and this is cool. Just little sweep right here. That's nice. Okay, so we get to the appassionato. Okay, and here there was also a balance problem, and that is just the enormous weight of the brass here. If you mark marcato, and like you want things to be well marked and you want them to be heavy, pretty much you'd have a brass chorale here with a little bit of icing around it, right? And it's just hugely heavy. Here is where you would mark forte, and you would take away some of the things that make it push too hard, like these accents, right? And then everything else can be fortissimo, and then this section will balance beautifully. Okay. And you just have to sort of ask how much, if you've got so much weight on the counter melody in the horns, is there even any point to anybody else doing the counter melody? Like you could hear how that just the powerful ringing sound here, of adding this octave flute on top and the first oboe, right? And it's quite barren here of any support to the counter melody, to the main melody, right? We've got the main melody is being doubled by very high C trumpet, okay, which is very powerful, and there's clarinet and trumpet together, which is extremely potent. And that is sort of in the middle here, but then it dies away, right? So, except for just the trumpet, right? So, I feel that you need to moderate the sound here. I don't think you should have a hole in your strings the way that you've got right here. Okay, you've already got violas on this octave. So look, just have the second violins jump up to the next octave and double the clarinets and trumpets. And you might say, well, wow, trumpets are so loud, you're not going to hear any strings. No, you are going to hear the strings, because with a quadruple octave here, the sound of the strings will reinforce itself, even with trumpet doubling on one of those voices. Okay, so yeah. And I feel this it's neat the way that you came to this little conclusion here, but I would say it's better for this voicing here of this chord to be spread amongst the winds and to add more winds to the mix here. Okay, so that way your strings can just play single notes here, and which they are far better at in the midst of the fury. Okay, rather than just suddenly throwing them this divisi or sort of strange double or triple stop playing. Okay, it's just much safer. Yeah, so I would just say add more stuff here to the other parts. Also, the bass was a bit weak. Okay, yeah, it's kind of strange. Like, see, here is where things should be mellowing out, and the timpani part gets just really, really heavy. So I would say, look, mezzo forte for everybody, right? Have them all back off, or else you're going to hear nothing but timpani here. Okay. Now, and once again, look, this can be P solo, right? All right. So the solos do not have to be marked up so loud compared to everybody else. It's almost like putting the spotlight on the player, and having them do a special little dance in front of the orchestra, as opposed to having them all the same dynamic, more or less. And then just say espressivo and solo and have hairpins in there to sort of bring out the sound. And then you have the solo as part of the texture of the orchestra rather than just being so far in front. And this is pizzicato. This could just as easily be marked piano, right? And once again, we've got all this dynamic mixing here. Pianissimo, piano, triple P, mezzo piano, right? This is not... Nobody is going to be able, no conductor is going to be able to spend the time on this to make all this work. Just choose, piano for your foreground and pianissimo for your background, and just really try to stick to much more simple dynamic scoring. But this is very cool, this little horn part in here. And yeah, and I really do like the way that it scored. Don't get me wrong. Okay, but just, the balance is just really, the concerns are exaggerated. Okay, and this is all fine. It's going to work. It's sort of slightly precarious, but not too bad. Okay. So now we get into, the da 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 bum 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 bum, and I feel that works really, really good with the almost, the solos in the brass. That's very, very cool. And trumpet against the clarinets. Just really, really cool ideas altogether, but just need some rethinking a little bit on some of the dynamics and a bit of the density of the scoring. And these are very cool. Like, so here you want a contrast between the two lines, and then you want dovetailing between these. So that's all good. And bassoon taking over the staccatos and these these arcing lines. And here the dynamics, the harmonics in the harp are going to be perfectly fine. That is nice. And the sultasto violas. Yeah, so I really do like the way that this all comes together at the end. I think that's very nicely scored. And I love the little celesta thing in here. That's awesome. Now, generally speaking, you would not be asking the cellos to play an artificial harmonic on a fifth. It's it's just there's got to be another instrument that can get this, that can get the sense of what you're trying to play in there, or another way of another position in which you could achieve this. All right. yeah, I mean, I think it's playable, but it's just kind of awkward. Less ideal than it could be. Okay, so that is it for this score. I really enjoyed this. Once again, just some superb efforts from our Patreon contestants, entrants. There's really not a contest. It's just a challenge. So yeah, so thank you very much, Yap, and we're going to go on to score number 5 now.